All right, we are live. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Winter is Coming, Weatherize Your Vintage Abode workshop with John Meehan. Before I properly introduce John, I'm going to just give a few announcements about kind of how things are going to run tonight and some things we have that are going on. First of all, we have the Treehouse Awards deadline is coming up. It is on October 26th. You can nominate projects online at chicagobungalow.org. So definitely go to our website if you have a project you want to nominate at chicagobungalow.org by October 26th. The way things are going to run tonight, if you haven't done this before with us, our chat is disabled, but we have the Q&A section for y'all to put any questions that you have in as we go. Also, a lot of questions are probably going to be answered along the way, so keep that in mind. You might want to hold off a little bit because I'm sure John's going to cover a whole lot of stuff just about, typical procedures and all the stuff you're going to want to know about how these things run with our weatherization program. We are ending promptly at 7 p.m. tonight, so keep that in mind as well. We are going to have time for Q&A most likely at the end, though, probably a good 15 minutes or so. John's presentation, I think it's probably going to be about 30, 40 minutes long, and then I'll open up Q&A after that. So we are also recording this evening, so keep that in mind. If you have to jump off at some point, or you want to rewatch any part of this, you can find it on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. So look for those. YouTube channel, we have a direct link on our homepage of our website, I think, also at chicagobungalow.org. So check that out. I think that's it. But without further ado, I want to introduce John Meehan, who's an old friend. We've been working together for a really long time. We did a hilarious series of videos together, among other things. So John grew up in the Chicago suburbs and graduated from University of Iowa in 2003. That's a good win they had last weekend. John has worked with DNR Construction for the last 8 years as an energy auditor. He's been certified by the Building Performance Institute, and the Building Performance Institute has become the nation's premier standards development and credentialing organization for residential auditing and upgrade work. Many of the millions of homes in this country were constructed before energy and building codes were established. These homes suffer from performance problems ranging from energy consumption to poor thermal comfort and indoor air quality issues. John and DNR Construction work with homeowners to help solve these problems. John currently lives in Lisle with his wife and 3 super adorable kids. All right, I think we can jump in whenever you're ready then, John, and I will be in the back checking out the Q&A. Oh, you're muted too.
All right, am I live now?
I can hear you now, yep.
Oh, hello everyone, I'm John Meehan. And I basically am the person who does the energy assessments for this grant that we have here to seal up your house and insulate your house. And I'm going to go through a slideshow here just to kind of describe to you everything that we do. Can everybody see that?
Are you sharing the screen, John?
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay.
Hold on. Sorry.
Take your time.
There we go.
Yeah.
Now let me just run this. Hold on.
Sure. Slideshow.
All right. Everybody can see this?
Yeah, it looks good.
Good. All right. So basically, like I said, I do energy assessments on these houses. So I'm probably the person that you would maybe meet if you signed up for the program. There's a good chance I'd come out to your house. There's a couple of us that do it with DNR Construction, but I would be maybe one of the people that would come out. And basically what I do is look at the house and do an assessment of how the condition of the house and health and safety stuff, and look at the insulation levels and tell you exactly what we would do to try to tighten up your house to make it more energy efficient. So basically, I'm just going to run through some of these slides and talk about this to you. So one of the things I want you to know about the program now is that it's kind of changed a little bit, and it's not just bungalows. Yes, we can do bungalows, but we can also do other houses. We can do ranch houses, split level houses, frame houses, Georgians, Cape Cods, Victorians. pretty much any house, as long as it's over 50 years old, we can do it for you. So basically I want to talk to you about what we're actually doing to your house. And that's two different things. We're trying to insulate your house, but we're also trying to seal up your house. And what I mean by seal up is tighten up your house so that you hold on to heat better. I'm going to kind of show you some pictures of some attics. And this is how a lot of the attics are in the Chicago area. They're just, these buildings are very well built. They were just never insulated that well. And they don't hold on to heat that well. And as a lot of you probably noticed, your bills can get really high and the house is still not that comfortable sometimes. So here's like your typical uninsulated attic. You can see all the floor joists. There's no insulation at all in this attic. And one of the things that people don't realize is that when they heat their house, a lot of your heat just finds ways to, heat rises and it goes up into that attic, and your house isn't holding on to the heat well. And so since your house doesn't hold on to the heat well, your furnace will have to run all the time, or your boiler will have to run a lot to keep your house warm. And it's hard for your house to ever stay at a certain temperature. So what we try to do is we go up into these attics. Here's some more unfinished attics. And you'll realize this is the floor of the attic here. These are your rafters up here. There's a little bit of insulation in here, but that's not much at all. If you can see the rafters in your attic, it's not enough insulation at all. These days they're having us put 16 inches in of insulation, and that settles to about 14 inches. And that is equivalent to an R49, which is basically a lot of R value to protect you from the elements. Because when it gets freezing in this attic, you have all this new insulation we put over the floor that's going to keep you warmer in the house. Here's like an R6. So R value is measured in inches. I don't want to get too confusing about this stuff, but every inch of R value is like an R3. So if there's 2 inches, it's an R6. There's just not, these are very under insulated attics. Also, I want you to pay attention to these penetrations and stuff in the attic, because I want to talk to you about some of that stuff. So one of the things that's really important about insulation, and I don't want to confuse anybody, but the insulation has to be touching where the heat stops. So it's like our clothes. It has to be touching our body for it to work. If you hold it away from your body, your jacket away from your body, it doesn't work well. I mean, it has to be touching where the heat stops. So same with insulation. It has to be touching. So if you have an unfinished attic, so let's go back to this picture here of this attic right here. All the insulation in this attic needs to go to the floor of the attic, because right below there is where the heated area is. If you went up to the rafters, which a lot of people used to think that's what you're supposed to do, it's not doing what it needs to do because it's not touching where the heat stops. So all the insulation needs to go to the floor of the attic if it's an unfinished attic. We'll talk about finished attics later too. So kind of what we do in this program is we go up in the attic if it's an unfinished attic. And here's what I want to show you. I want to show you this picture about, this is basically what's going on in a lot of these houses, okay? There's a lot of penetrations in the attic floor, okay? This is an unfinished attic, and you can see that the heat gets through these penetrations and it gets up into the attic. So that's a waste of heat. You want that heat staying in your house. And what happens is that when you lose heat in your house wants to pull on air from outside to replace the air that's being lost, because whatever air is lost from your house, that air has to be replaced. So if you're losing a lot of heat in the wintertime, your house is literally pulling on air to try to replace the air that you're losing. And it's pulling on cold air. So what we really want to try to do in these houses is we want to air seal and insulate. And air sealing is sealing all these penetrations so that the heat can't escape up into the attic. Okay, here's an example of all the different ways that heat escapes your house, okay? Floors, walls, and ceilings, 31%, 15% from ducts. A fireplace can be 14%. Plumbing penetrations can be 13%. Doors, 11%. Windows, 10%. Isn't that surprising? Most people always think that windows is where they're losing all their energy from. It's not. So air infiltrates into and out of your home through every hole and crack. About 1/3 of this air infiltrates through openings in your ceilings, walls, and floors. So this program will let us insulate those things. We can insulate the ceiling, we can insulate the walls, And we can seal things up. And what I mean by seal things up, I'm going to go over kind of what we would do at an average assessment if I came to your house. So when I come to the house, I come to these bungalows, and the first thing I want to do is go and see the attic area and see if it's insulated or not insulated. And how well it's insulated, and if the attic's finished or unfinished, because there's different ways, and we'll talk about all these different ways to insulate. This is called a blower door test, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. All right, so here's an example of air sealing, okay? This whole penetration right here in this attic is wide open. This is the attic floor. So if you were up in the attic and you were standing up in the attic and you're looking down, this is the floor. And this is a huge, this whole wall cavity right here, it's all wide open. And this is the plumbing stack. So what's happening is that your heat is coming up to the attic right through this wide open area. So what we did over here is we sealed it all up. We took foam board and cut it and put it in there. And then we put spray foam all around it. And now your heat can't escape through this wall cavity as easily. It's pretty much sealed off. And just that alone, if you think about it, that's like having a window open all the time. So we really seal things up, especially things like this plumbing stack. Here's a picture of the gap between the inner and outer wall. I don't want anybody to get confused, but around the perimeter of a lot of these houses, there's a gap between the walls. Here's the inner wall and there's the brick outer wall. And we sealed the top of that so that your air doesn't just come out your walls up into the attic. Here's another thing that a lot of houses have that we seal up. This is a recessed light that are up that you can access from the attic. So what we literally do is we seal it up and put a box of drywall over it because I don't want that insulation sitting on that hot light. Here's a chimney penetration that we sealed around. A lot of heat gets up through this area. When you're heating your house, it just goes right up through those areas. So there's an example of sealing penetrations. We're spray foaming around penetrations. This is a fire rated caulk we use around fire rated spray foam we use around a chimney. Now, what I want to talk about for a second here is that there's finished attics too, and a lot of people are going to know what I'm talking about. They have an attic upstairs, but there's rooms up there. And I don't want to confuse anyone here. We can talk about this more later, but these attics that are finished, it's going to be different because I want to insulate around where the heat stops. So let me try to find a picture of a finished attic for you. So when the attic's finished, usually there's walls in the attic, and then behind the walls, there's an attic area. These are usually called knee walls, okay? So what we have to do is cut into this area to get into the attic because it's behind the wall, the attic area. And again, this would be a picture of what it looked like behind the wall before the work was done because there's not enough insulation. Anytime you can see the joists in the floor, you're really low on insulation. So what we do is we cut into the wall and we insulate behind those walls. So here's like what it looks like behind those walls. I don't want to confuse anybody, but this is an outer area. There's the knee wall. And what happens in here, I don't want to confuse you, but the air travels in and out under the floor. This is the heated area on this side. And it gets really cold in this area in the wintertime. And it gets really hot in this area in the summertime. And the air travels under the floor of the heated area or the cooled area in the summer. So what we do is we block that area off. So now that the cold air doesn't travel under the floor. And then also the hot air in the summer doesn't travel under the floor. Then this whole wall is facing the heated side. So we're going to insulate this wall too. See, here's a picture from like another angle. This outer area, this wall we insulated. Here's an unfinished attic with no insulation, and we just insulated the floor of the entire attic with 16 inches of cellulose. The insulation that we use, cellulose, is recycled newspaper and fibers. It's a real green product. And it settles really well. It's got some weight to it. So it's a real good insulator. Now, some people want to leave storage areas in their attic, or they want to leave a walkway because they might have a room somewhere else in the attic. So in that case, what we'll do is we'll leave a walkway right there, or we'll leave a storage area. Like here was an attic that was completely empty. And then what we did is we built this huge storage area here so that they could store stuff in the middle of the attic, and it won't all be covered in insulation. Like in this picture here, you wouldn't be able to store stuff here because you can't really, you'd be walking in insulation. So yes, you don't get as much insulation when you do the storage area, but that way you still have an area to put stuff, because a lot of people like to store stuff in their attics. Here's some more pictures of like an attic that was unfinished, and then after we did the work, we left a big area for them to store stuff, and then on the sides we put the 16 inches, and we boxed it out with wood so that no insulation would ever fall into this area. There's the top. Here's another area at the top of a finished attic called a collar beam that we insulated. We cut in hatches. If we have to make a hatch, we'll make a hatch. Sometimes we can leave an existing hatch if they want. Otherwise, we can just patch the ceiling. But the homeowner is responsible for painting in this program. We insulate out. We always insulate the hatches too. With this is rigid foam board, and that's good because if you just don't have any insulation on top of the hatch, that's a big void in that area. So you always want to have the hatch insulated. Here's another picture behind those walls again. We put this on the wall first, which is the fiberglass insulation, and then we cover it with Tyvek wrap. So behind your walls in a finished attic, that's kind of what it looks like. And again, I went back to this picture earlier. We had to cut in to get access, and then we made a little hatch here. We made a little door, we left a door for them. Another area that we try to seal up is in the basements, around the perimeter of the basement. Basically, we just spray foam around these areas. If you have an unfinished basement, we spray foam around the top here, because this is an area that your house will pull on air to replace the air that you're losing. So your house is pulling on air. So we seal these areas up. Another area that we can do in a lot of these houses, they might have a rear porch where there's like a living area off the back of the house. These are usually very poorly insulated. So what we normally do is we take foam board and we attach it to the rafters. And then I take a hose and I pack the board with insulation. And then that's what it looks like when we're done. That's the ceiling. So there's foam board here. And then behind that is that blown in insulation that I use the hose to blow in above it. So this is like an example of a back rear addition. I don't want to confuse anybody, but I want to talk about like wall insulation too, okay? Because we can insulate the walls on a lot of these houses. Hold on, I'm going to talk about that in a second here. Basically, each house, there's different ways that we insulate the walls on the houses. The program will pay for the walls to be insulated, which is nice. So if you have siding, like this house has siding, a lot of times we can insulate the walls from outside because the siding comes in strips, and we just pull off a strip of siding, and then we drill holes in the exterior like this. We pulled off a sheet of siding, there it is, and we drilled holes about every 20 inches or so between the studs. And then we take a hose and we pack it with insulation, and then we put the siding right back on. So it wouldn't, there's nothing you have to do afterwards, and we patch it all up and it'll just be just like it was before, but now all your walls will be insulated. If you have a brick house, it's a little bit different because the walls on a brick house are not studded. So what we would do is we would have to drill small holes from the inside and inject foam into the wall, because there's a very small gap on a lot of these brick houses. They were made with plaster and lath, and there's just a very small gap. It's only about 1 inch between the wall and the brick. So we can't stick a hose in there. If that's the case, what we do is we inject foam in there, and we drill little holes throughout the house, and we inject foam from the inside. We patch it all up. That foam hardens behind the wall into like a board, and no air will travel through your wall anymore. And then your walls are all insulated. We patch everything up, but in that case, the homeowner does have to do the painting. We also weather strip doors. Like again, our main goal is to try to seal up your house as much as we can. And I want to talk about how we know how well we sealed up your house. So what we do when we come to your house is this air test. This right here, okay? This is called a blower door test. It's a really important part of our energy assessment, okay? So what we do is we close all the windows in the house, and then we put this fan on the front door, and there's a little manometer attached to it. This fan puts your house under pressure, so it's pulling on everything. It's pulling on air out your front door. And it tells me a number on this little computer here. I don't want to confuse you, but it's in cubic feet per minute of airflow. So just think about it this way. Let's say that the number I got was 5,000. And then we did all the work. And then we did this test at the end, and the number I get was 2,500. Well, now I know that I tightened your house by 50%. So this is an extremely important test to do for this kind of work that we're doing, because it's going to measure the house before I do the work and tell me how drafty the house is. And then it's going to measure afterwards to tell me how much I lowered it by. And that's why in this program, I really want to stress the air sealing part of the program, because we're really sealing up your house. We're not just insulating it. And if you just insulate your house, that's good, but heat can still escape through all the penetrations. So our goal is to seal up all the penetrations and insulate your house. And by doing those two things, you're going to get double benefit. You're going to hold on to heat better in your house, and your bills are going to be lower too, because you're not losing the heat like you were before. So remember earlier when I said that your furnace runs constantly a lot of the time to try to keep your house warm? Your furnace won't have to run as hard because your house is going to hold on to the heat better. So that's why we do a blower door test at every house. And then I kind of want to talk about some other things that I do at the house also. Is I do a lot of health and safety tests, because it's okay. We want to tighten up your house and insulate your house, but at the same time, we want to make sure that it's safe. And what I mean by health and safety is a couple of things. We want to make sure that your furnace, every house we go to, we do a test on the furnace and the water heater, okay? And what I'm doing, or a boiler, if you have a boiler too, with radiant heat. But I'm going to go to some pictures here of like a corroded flue, an example. So like this flue, okay, it's really badly corroded and it's just not in good shape anymore. So this would be something that I could replace. But what I'm doing at every house is I test the furnace. Normally, if there's a metal flue, we drill a little hole in the flue, and I have this piece of equipment that I stick in there, and it tells me how much carbon monoxide the furnace or boiler is producing, or the water heater. And it also tells me how well everything's venting out of the house, because it's really important to make sure that this stuff's venting out of your house properly, because a lot of times what happens is things can get blocked in the chimney. And if that's the case, then if things get bad and this thing starts to produce carbon monoxide, it's coming back into the house. And yes, that's why we have carbon monoxide detectors, but we just want to be very, we just want to be diligent to make sure that everything's venting out the right way. So every house I go to, we do a test on the water heater and the furnace. I'm also looking around your house for things like mold and things like that, to try to make it so that, we don't want this kind of stuff in the house. And if I tighten up your house and it's moldy, it's only going to get worse. So one of the things that I do after we insulate the house, that this program will help let us do to your house, is every single house we put an exhaust fan in. It's called an ASHRAE fan. Now, what this fan does is it pulls on air very quietly all the time. Normally we put it in a bathroom. It looks just like a bathroom fan, and that's going to pull on air. Because your house is not as drafty anymore, I do want something pulling on air a little bit, just so you have good air quality, because I do tighten your house up a lot. A lot of newer houses that are built today have ASHRAE fans because they build houses today extremely tight. I'll give you an example. A lot of the bungalows I go to, when I do a blower door test, the number I get is around 5,000, 4,000 to 5,000. If that house was built today, the number would be like 1,200 to 1,500. So your guys' houses, these houses in the city that we're looking at, these older homes, are extremely drafty. We're talking 3 to 4 times more drafty than a brand new house. And that's why there's such a benefit to this program. because we can tighten up your house and help with the bills and make it more comfortable. And it's all going to be taken care of, no cost to the homeowner. Another like questions that we get, questions people ask us about a lot are, why are closets so cold? It's pretty simple. Closets don't have heat most of the time. So what happens is that you leave the door closed to your closet and none of your heat ever gets in there and it's freezing in there all the time. Yes, I can insulate the walls in there, but at the same time, no heat ever gets in there. So that's why closets stay cold so much. We also are allowed to for glass block inserts, we just want to make sure that those are sealed up well in basements. Sometimes people leave those up too much, like year round, with just the screen on, and a lot of air comes in and out. We don't do anything to basements. I just want to tell everybody we don't do anything to basements. There's probably a lot of reasons, but one of the major ones is that a lot of the basements are below grade, and we don't want to be insulating below grade because there could be moisture problems and stuff. I get this question a lot. People say they can see light outside the side of their attic. If it's an unfinished attic, that's actually okay. You want air coming in and out of your attic. That's not a living space. It keeps it dry in there. That's why we have vents in the attics also. You'll have vents on your roof. If you don't have vents, that's an issue. That's another thing we look at when we come out. We don't replace any windows at this time right now. However, if I do inject foam into the walls, it does help to seal up. It butts up around the perimeter of the window and helps to seal them up. Like I said, I'm making sure that the chimney's not blocked, that the flues are all good. And that's part of our health and safety. I'm also looking at the condition of the roof on the house. We need to make sure that the roof is not leaking when I come out to do the house. I need to make sure that everything in the house is safe pretty much. I'm making sure that the house is safe for us to do work, and for that after I do the work, it'll be safe. And it's just part of the health and safety that this program does. And it's great that they do it, because some of the things they give me us a little bit of money to help if there's a problem with the health and safety, to help out and to fix those things for you so we can, make it better. But really, that's what this program is. We're basically, I want to tell you the things I can also insulate. I can insulate crawl spaces. We can insulate attics. We can insulate walls. I can weather strip doors. Always have to put a bathroom fan in the house. I always do a cleaning on your furnace for you. I didn't mention that. Every house that we do, we can do a cleaning. As long as it's not brand new and under some kind of warranty, I'll always do a cleaning on your furnace or boiler for you for free as part of this program. And yeah, basically the program is about air sealing and insulating your attic and lowering these bills for you guys. And it's a great program to take advantage of. And what we're here for, to do this work for you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any. But yeah, that's basically what we're doing.
Sorry, John.
Sorry.
We did have a couple of questions. If this is a good time to start answering those.
Yeah, I can answer some.
Okay, great. Let's see here. If there is no attic entry from the house, how do you guys check it?
Okay, that's a really good question. Because there's another thing I didn't mention in attics is that sometimes there's stuff in attics for health and safety that I'm looking for too, such as knob and tube wiring. That's like old wiring that's not good. You don't want to insulate around that stuff. And then sometimes there's what's called vermiculite, which is this old insulation that they used to use. And basically where they mined it, some people got sick. So what we do is if you have any vermiculite in your attic, we test it. But back to the question, since you don't have access to the attic, we have to cut in somewhere, because I want to look at the attic to make sure that it doesn't have those things that I was just talking about. I want to make sure that there's no knob and tube, which is really bad old wiring that you don't want to insulate around. And I want to make sure that there's no vermiculite. If there is vermiculite, do not worry. We run into it a lot. We'll get it tested for you. we have a person we work with in Indiana, and they do a test. It's a lab that does a test on it. They'll come out and take a sample of it. We'll take care of it. It's no cost to you. And that way we can find out if it has, if it comes back with like asbestos in it, then we'll talk. But a lot of the times it comes back that there's less than 1%. And if that's the case, we can do work on the house still. So to answer your question, I would have to cut in from somewhere, especially on, I want to mention one other thing. We've opened this up now to 2 flats, and a majority of the 2 flats, okay? I want to talk about 2 flats for a second. 2 flats have a flat roof cavity. Actually, I think I have a picture of a flat roof in here. Right here, this is kind of what a flat roof cavity looks like. There's joists at the top. And then you have, so there's actually, people don't realize this on these 2 flats. There's a lot of area up there that I could still get in there and insulate. This is a 2 flat, this picture right here. That's what the flat roof cavity looks like. And people don't even know it's there. They just think their roof's right above them, but it's not. There's a big cavity here. In that case, I cut in also. So what I'd have to do, let's say I came to your house, I'll put plastic and everything down. Don't worry about it. I'll clean everything up. I just want to cut a little hole so that I can see what the attic looks like. And then after I see what the attic looks like, I'll patch it up for you. And then when we come back out, we'll cut into the same spot and we'll patch everything up. Everything that I cut into, if I ever have to cut in at your house, we always patch it up. We'll mud it and everything. You guys just have to paint. But yeah, that's a good question. I know it's not what everybody wants to hear that I have to cut in, but I really got to take a look what's in there before we move forward, just because of I want to make sure that there's no health and safety issues.
All right. Is it okay to close the bathroom door to preserve heat if an exhaust fan is installed in the bathroom ceiling?
Is it okay to close the bathroom? You kind of want to, so the bathroom fan that we use is an ASHRAE fan, which runs all the time at a very, very, very low speed. And you kind of want to leave the bathroom open if you're not in there, because it just pulls on air throughout, but very, very lightly, but it just pulls on air to keep the house, so you have good air quality in your house. As far as like leaving the bathroom door closed, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you have it open, that's fine too. I mean, I would leave it open just because it's pulling on air. But if you leave a bathroom door closed, it's not gonna make a huge difference. Maybe if you want to tell me a little bit more of that situation, I could answer more.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's just, I mean, I do that sometimes at home with my radiators. I will, but yeah, I think that answers the way I interpreted it as well. First of all, Oriana, I'm the one who was emailing you back and forth about your home research. She has like the coolest bungalow with like a coach house in the back. Her question is, I've heard that homes with clay tile roofs don't need additional insulation. Is that true?
I don't believe that's true. I don't know for sure, but I would have to say this: if it's a pitched roof and there's no insulation below, like above the ceiling in the house, then no, it would need to be insulated. Anything that is any pitched roof, anytime you have a roof above the ceiling where there's no insulation directly touching the ceiling in the house, then it's not insulated properly. Yeah, even if it was a clay or tile roof, it would still need to be insulated. Now, as far as like, there are times when there's a different way to insulate too. Some people spray foam the rafters and all that stuff, and that kind of brings everything more inside. But as far as I know, they still need to be insulated if it's no insulation in the attic.
I would guess that with a clay tile roof, it probably, you know, from a more traditional, like with the technologies they had at the time, if you have like stone is warmed up all day by the sun, and then the sun goes down, you know, and then it radiates that heat back into the space. So it probably does have some, you know, useful thermal qualities that way.
Yes, it probably has better thermal quality.
Asphalt's not going to have, but yeah, I still think that, yeah, the kind of insulation we have today is a whole other barrel of monkeys. So definitely another level. Okay, if my attic has some rolled insulation, but not enough, do you typically blow the new insulation over it, or do you remove the old insulation first?
So what we're gonna do in that case, there's a lot of houses like that. You might have one roll or rolls next to each other. For a couple, I want to explain a couple things. One is that the rolled insulation isn't that good because there's a lot of gaps in between the rolls. There's a lot of gaps of insulation where if you blow it in, fills in all the crevices. In that case, what we would do is we would have to move around a lot of the insulation, the rolls, because we need to spray foam around the penetrations like I was telling you about. And then when we're done, we'll just bury everything in we'll leave the old insulation, but we'll bury it with the cellulose. So you wouldn't see it. It will be like 6 inches over, 6 to 10 inches over that you won't see anymore. So do we get rid of it? No, it still has some value to it, but we do have to move it around a lot. And then we add cellulose over it so you won't see it anymore.
Do you repair or replace furnaces?
Sometimes we can do things, small repairs. If it's a major repair, we can't do it. In this program, we do not replace furnaces. Basically, what we would do is if your furnace is producing a lot of carbon monoxide, I have one of my technicians look at it to make sure that it doesn't have a cracked heat exchanger or anything. Or if your boiler was producing a lot of carbon monoxide or your water heater, before we just say, get a new one, we will try to address it, and I'll have a tech look at it and see if we could, adjust the gas valve and get it so that it's running properly. But there are instances though, where there's just I can't fix it. And in that case, we need to get a good working furnace. So the homeowner would be responsible for that.
Okay. If someone doesn't qualify for the program because of income, can they reach out to DNR for this kind of work? And if so,
sure,
what
definitely.
Would,
if you want, I could come out.
Assessment look like for that?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty. I'll do an assessment for $100 normally. If you just want me to do a blower door test and write up all the work and give you a scope of work. If you just want me to look at it, I'll just look at it too. I mean, I don't have to do all the tests first. If you want, what I sometimes do is this: I'll come and look at your house for you for free, and then if you want to move forward, then I'll come back and do all the testing and stuff. As far as like testing the furnace and water heater and doing the blower door test and everything, that is for somebody who doesn't qualify and they want this kind of work done. I'd be happy to do that for them.
Is the blower door test done with the walk-up attic door and basement door open?
Okay, so it depends. Yes, if it's a walk-up attic it's a heated attic that has rooms up there, then yes, you want the door open. If it's an unheated attic, no, you want the hatch or door to the unheated attic closed. And yes, we always have the basement door open because I want to include the basement as the house. So I have all the doors closed to the outside of the house. Basement open, and then depending on if the attic's finished or unfinished, that would let me know whether to leave it open. But if you had a walk-up attic, yes, it's probably a walk-up to a finished attic, so I would probably have the door open. If it was a walk-up to an unfinished attic though, I close that door.
Okay, what if my house is still cold and drafty after having insulation added? And I'm not sure if that's a job that you guys did or if that was a job they did at home, is the only thing.
Well, I'd be happy to look at it and come and look at it and see what is still wrong. I could do a blower door test. I mean, these things too everybody's comfort is different. So that's okay. That's okay if that's the instance. And if we did the work, I'll come and look at it, or I can always come and do a blower door test. I'd be happy to do that kind of stuff and take a closer look at it to see, if there's anything that was missed, or, if someone else did the work, I could, maybe see if it's still really drafty, or I'm happy to look into that kind of stuff for you. And we're always, one of the things about DNR is that we're totally here for, to provide service to you. And if we did work and that's the case, then yes, we'll come back out and look. And even if I didn't do the work and you're curious about it, I'd be happy to come out and, take a look at it for you.
So, I mean, there's a few people here who definitely, they want to know if you do services, do insulation services year round, which I can say is yes. That's easy enough. And just, I mean, you can easily Google DNR Construction, but do you want to just say how to contact you guys, the best way to contact you?
Yeah, sure. If you ever want to contact our office, the number's 708-535-2245. I wish I could maybe post it somewhere later. And then if you even my personal cell phone, I'm happy to give that out. It's 312-485-2013.
You're a generous man, John. There's 120 people on this.
That's all right. I trust him.
We can also, just so everybody knows, we're going to do a follow-up email to everybody after this. Anybody who signed up, I should say. So, you know, we'll include the information for DNR Construction in that email as well. So, you know, if you don't have a pen handy or something, don't worry about it. What if your attic's been finished to a living, is a finished living space?
Okay, that's a good question. And it's hard for me to, I wish I had a little bit better picture. I'll work on getting some better ones, but we have to insulate around the thermal boundary of the attic. So we would insulate around the finished part of the attic. So I'm trying to see, let's see if I have something here that could show you. So like this is a finished attic. It's just that this is the outer area and this is a knee wall over here. And on the side of that is a finished area. We have to insulate around the perimeter that where the heat stops. See that outer area here, there's no heat. So I have to insulate these walls, and then we would still insulate below and above this floor right here. If it's a finished attic, that's no problem. It just depends on how much room they left. Now, there are some places where they built it out so much that there's no room anywhere. I can check the walls in that case. But sometimes they really build out the attic so much that there is no space. And I'd have to look at it and see what I can do. Every house though, the majority of houses we can do stuff to. It's rare that sometimes an attic's built out so much that there's just nowhere to insulate, but that's a very rare thing. Most of the time there's a ton of finished attics I do. Today I looked at 2 houses that had finished attics and we did those. So there's just a lot of areas in those finished attics that have never been properly insulated and sealed off well. There's a lot of areas where you lose heat and stuff like that. So we know a lot about how to tighten those up. So a finished attic is no problem. It just really, everyone's different. So I would have to look at it, but yeah, we do finished attics all the time.
Great. So it's a little out of your scope, but you probably have some thoughts about it too. With original wood windows, if we don't have time to reglaze everything before winter sets in, what can we do short of using shrink wrap plastic over everything?
A lot of times you can make sure that they're caulked around the around the perimeter of the window. You can caulk, but there's really not a lot of these old wood windows have like lead weight cavities and different things to them that they're tough, you know, they're tough to work with. I mean, you need to definitely have a storm window on the outside. If you don't have storms, that's something that you'd want to have.
Definitely. And you can get custom, you know, there's like custom magnetic storms you can get that'll pop in and off. Also, you know, a lot of people don't realize that the little, you know, locks on your window. I was always confused, like, why don't we have locks on the window? I live on like the 2nd or 3rd floor. No one's going to like Spider-Man up here, right? And, you know, the actual reason for those is if you make sure, I'm assuming you have double sash windows, Ariana. So, you know, make sure your top and bottom sashes are adjusted and in place. And when you lock those, that's actually the real function of that is to really seal those windows in place. So it's a good tight fit that way. And that actually makes a big difference. So,
yes, Carla's so right about that. I actually have a funny story. I went to my best friend's house that I grew up with. And he said, I feel like these windows are so drafty. And I went around to probably 6 of them. And it was exactly what Carla said. See, they weren't locked. And they were a little bit, even just a little bit lower. And they weren't locked the correct way. So I just locked them for him. We were laughing about it. But a lot of people don't realize that a lot of times it's just not locked properly. I had the same thing happen in my own house one night. This window was so drafty and I was like, oh my gosh, it's not locked properly. That's all it is. A lot of times, a lot of those windows, like Carla said, if it's a double hung, push up and get it so that you lock it, and that really seals it up.
Yeah, that top sash will it's like notorious for dropping down a little bit.
Yep.
It's like pouring in through some little corner or something.
Oh yeah.
Good question. Dawn said, R0 here. I have older electrical which needs to be updated before the attic floorboards. Do I get the electrical work done before I apply for this program under the attic floorboards? So
yes, most likely if it's bad electrical, like if it's knob and tube and stuff like that, because still that's a good thing. In a couple ways I want to answer this is one is that if there's floorboards in the attic, that's fine, but the insulation needs to go under the floorboard too. Because if you just blow over the floorboard, you're leaving a huge gap between the ceiling and the floor of the attic. It has to go under there. And since there's probably electrical under your floor and it's not good, yes, it would have to be updated first.
So how big are the holes that are made on a brick home? And I know you answered, I'll let you re-clarify that though.
Yeah, Carla and I did a video too with the that you can go to the bungalow website and see. But they're about 3/4 of an inch, so not big at all, like the size of a quarter. And we inject foam in there, and then it spreads out a certain amount. That's why I have to drill so many. I have to drill 4 of those holes, like a quarter, vertically, every 2 feet, and that way I can inject foam in there, and it spreads out behind the wall that much. But it's not the kind of foam. I don't want you to think that it's the same kind of foam as like great stuff, because that stuff like is expanding foam. This foam expands, but it's more like a shaving cream. It's a liquid based, and if you use that really big great stuff, it'll blow your wall right out. You can't use that stuff for this kind of thing. It's a special foam. It's called phenolic foam. But yeah, they're about the size of a little bit less than the size of a quarter.
Yeah, and just to clarify again, it's done on the plaster on the inside of your home.
Yes.
Between you know, for example, like a bungalow, it's what's called a double wide brick wall. So you have like a whole brick wall going around your home, and then you have an additional brick wall that goes around that brick wall.
Yes.
On the interior of your house, for that first interior brick wall, that's where your plaster is over that, and there's like a little gap between that plaster and that first line of brick there. So they insulate between that little gap.
Yes, she's very right.
I'm not sure if my gesticulating was very clear. I'm sorry, but
no, it's perfect. No, it's perfectly. That's exactly right, Carla.
But also to John's point about the videos. So we did a few videos about that really were there with cameras showing you exactly like what these things look like in your home. So we can also add that to the email as well that we're going to send out at the end of this. It's all on our web page on our website, Chicago Bungalow. So it's called our How to Home series. And there's a bunch of videos there on other topics as well, but it's a really great way to it's hard to sort of conceptualize these things.
Yes.
You have all these pictures. So it's me and John just kind of bobbing around and showing everything that's going on. Okay, would you blow over insulation on top of tested vermiculite or remove it first?
If it's tested, you can blow over it, because you're going to pay a lot of money to get it removed. If it wasn't, and if it's been tested and it's negative, then yeah, I would just blow right over it. And that way, by getting it tested, you know that. See, when we're air sealing and things like that in the attic and crawling around up there, we just want to make sure that that stuff's negative, and that way we're fine being around all that without knowing. If you know it's negative, yeah, you can totally blow over it. And
obviously if it's positive, then you can't.
Yeah, don't do anything if it's positive. Don't even go up there yourself. I mean, it's not going to be disturbed. So if it's in your attic and no one goes up there, that's okay. But just don't go up there and crawl around and try to do things, because then you're going to breathe that stuff in. Yeah. And there's a lot of professional services out there that could help out with that. Your options are, though, either don't disturb it at all or have a professional look at it if it's positive.
All right, those are all of the questions we have. If anybody out there wants to apply for the Energy Savers program, again, just go to our website at chicagobungalow.org. I think it's chicagobungalow.org/energy savers, but you'll see it on the main page of our website. Just click on that and it'll tell you the criteria, pretty much most of the details that you're going to need around whether or not you might qualify for the program. So it's a great way to check it out. To John's point, DNR also does stuff that's not part of the program on the side. I'm not sure what the weight is on these things, but just to warn you guys, you're not going to be insulated through our program this year. we have
probably not this year.
Quite a list at this point, and I know it's getting cold and everybody wants to be insulated, but we just have a pretty extensive list. So just keep that in mind. How can you check the status of an approved assessment? You would want to email Emily Schmidt at Chicago Bungalow. So it's E Schmidt at Chicago Bungalow. Hang on, let me see if, hang on, let me type it in here. Emily's our grants manager. It's ESCHMIDT at chicagobungalow.org. You can also just call our main line, or email our info at chicagobungalow.org. Well, we're a small, tight crew, and we're constantly in communication, so we will get back to you with their status. But you should hear back there, through email and phone call. Super diligent about getting a hold of people any way we possibly can.
So really quick, also, the way the process works is that you apply, and then when you're accepted, then you get on the list, and then me or another guy that I work with, there's like 3 of us that look at these. We would come out and look at your house, and then usually after that, it's about 2 to 3 more weeks at least until we can come out and do the work. But I want to stress one thing, that everything's done in one day when we do the work. Everybody works for DNR Construction. We don't subcontract. They're all our full-time employees. And those are just a couple important things I wanted to let everybody know.
Let's see, Alejandro. Unfortunately, there are not any exceptions if you don't qualify in terms of your income. The grant is, we don't control what the requirements are for it. We just administer the grants. DNR doesn't control that either. I mean, if you can pay separately with something, outside of our program with DNR Construction, but we can't give you a grant unless you do qualify with all the different qualifications that are, sort of listed out in the application online. So again, go to our website, chicagobungalow.org, and click on Energy Savers to find out what all those requirements are and to apply. All right, we're back down to 0. So I think we're going to call it. John, thank you so much. This was super helpful. Very interesting. Again, everybody, we're going to send an email out. We'll have, you can watch this video as many times as you want to on Facebook or on our YouTube page. We'll have additional information with just DNR's basic contact information for you guys if you want to give them a call separately to do something if you don't qualify for the program. And also a link to the videos that John and I did doing a walkthrough and actually showing the process of doing an energy audit and also all of the insulation and air sealing. So all that good stuff to come if you signed up and we have you on the list. And thank you all for coming tonight. John, thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you guys. Looking forward to meeting some of you guys.
All right.